Hey, thanks for being a part of the conversation. Let's do some pod crashing. Episode number 258 is with Joshua Topolsky from the podcast, What Future?
I'm good. How are you?
Fantastic. I guess I should start off by saying, is this the AI Joshua or is this really you?
Unfortunately, it's really me. I'd love to have an AI version of myself that I could just throw into an interview. That would be amazing.
Oh my God. I mean, well, look at what Paul McCartney is doing with John Lennon. I cannot wait to hear this song. I want to know what he's done.
Oh, wait, no, he's not doing an AI John Lennon, is he?
Yes. That was the news all last week, that they have finally completed this song that John Lennon once put on a cassette tape, and now they've mastered it, and it's really John Lennon.
Wow. Okay, interesting. I was out of the country, so I somehow missed that story, but that will be interesting. Paul McCartney did a video pretty recently where he de-aged himself, where he was like a young Paul McCartney.
Wow.
So he clearly is embracing the technology. The only question that I have is the song any good?
Yeah,
if it was on a tape for that long, is it just one of the clunkers that, the Beatles might have had a couple of clunkers we never heard. It's possible.
So many people are investing in AI technology, and one of them is Ryan Reynolds, which doesn't shock me because this guy is so ahead of the curve.
Yeah. Ryan Reynolds is he's everywhere.
Yeah.
He's got a phone company. He's got a tequila. He's Deadpool. Now I guess he's an AI guy. Look, I mean, I think there's a whole bunch of excitement around this space. I think that we're in the early innings of something that's an explosive and transformative technology. As a person who has used it, spent some time talking to the people who create it, studied it, I would say it is absolutely one of the most important and transformative technologies that has happened in our lifetime. But we are also really, really early into it. And so a lot of people are kind of like imagining futures that may or may not happen. Right. So there's a lot of noise out there right now.
Do you look at yourself as being a mad scientist because of the things that you're investigating?
Well, the mad part, I think, for sure. The scientist part, I'm not classically trained, but I think, there is, all of this, my career has been obviously in telling stories about technology and, building media organizations around it and, trying to figure out like how to talk about what what is coming and what is already here to make people really understand its importance and its place in culture. I think, and so in doing that, I feel having the exposure to it, at times has felt like you're in a lab, just kind of with beakers blowing up in your face. But it's also to try to grab hold of it and understand it and then tell people about it to me, it's like feels very natural to me. So it's been super fun, but at times absolutely confusing, absolutely sort of blinding in its speed.
What led you to the podcast, What Future? Because first of all, it is so interesting to listen to when I'm cruising down these busy streets of Charlotte.
Well, it is good for driving. It's great for if you're on a bike, if you're in a car, long. I think people should listen to it when they're driving down an empty highway in the middle of the night. I think that's a time to really immerse yourself in my my sounds. But I think, look, I've spent my career as a journalist and as a creator trying to kind of tell these stories. And when we started talking about a podcast, I've done them before, but it was like, what's the next thing? Where do we go next? There's this whole question, and it's not just about technology, but it's about our entire reality. It feels, and frankly, because it's through the lens of technology and the mirror of technology, I think that everything feels like it is just so splintered and so high velocity. And what I really wanted to try to do in my own, maybe like you said, mad scientist way is like, can we talk about all this stuff in the context of where we're headed and what it means, right? And so if we're talking about, the financial markets, or we're talking about politics, or we're talking about, AI, how do you put it through this lens of, okay, here's how we process this in our current reality, and here's where that processing is headed. So, that was an exciting way to do it. I don't know if that makes sense. Maybe I sound completely off my rocker, but it's like, I think there's just a new conversation to have about this stuff. And it is like, not so much like talking to the academics, but talking to the people who are making and studying and creating, and then trying to get them to explain like how's this work? Where is it going?
See, you bring a sense of transparency to AI technology in the way that we better understand it. And the reason why is because right now we're pretty much being trained what an AI is through the...
For whatever reason, and read into this how you will, but there's a human inclination to, when confronted with AI in particular, but lots of new technologies, to go to doomsday scenarios and to talk about the ways and the ways it can be misused or the ways it may decide to sort of abuse its creators. And I think, to start with one, like, that's a very human idea. It's a very human idea that this technology will wake up one day and want to destroy us. I think maybe it's because human beings have made such a habit of destroying each other. We think like naturally anything we create is going to be used for some very dark purposes. But I don't know that a machine would necessarily, if it were sentient or alive, which none of these AI programs are. None of the stuff that we see right now is actually thinking. Right? It's doing a very highly complex process, but it is not what a human brain does when it thinks. And there's an important difference there, right? So we're not there yet in terms of this technology even being as sophisticated as the stuff that's going to be in the new Mission Impossible movie or in the Terminator films, not even by a long shot. But the real question then is to ask is, if it ever gets there, what will the thing want to do? Yeah. Right. And I think that we tend to go towards some pretty bad scenarios, but I also think it's just as likely that we will not be able to guess what it wants to do or what it thinks because we cannot perceive of or conceive of how that mind would work. And so there's a lot of unknowns there. Does that fill me with fear? Not so much. I mean, you can still unplug it. I mean, it can still just be turned off. Like it's not this inevitable thing that will exist forever. It's like we still have a lot of control over where the technology goes.
I got to tell you, Joshua, the astronauts laugh at me when I bring up AI technology because I keep telling them that it'll be the AI that'll step on Mars, and they laugh at that because in their heart they're convinced, no, it'll be man that'll step on Mars first.
I mean, you think about all the times you've tried to watch a movie on Netflix and it just won't load. There's an error, it buffers and weird, or your internet goes out or whatever. I mean, it's funny. We talk about technology like it's this incredibly infallible thing that once you create, like, oh, everything's a calculator, right? Like, oh, if I need to know a math problem, I can punch it into a calculator and the calculator will give me the perfect answer. Well, before there was a calculator, there was an abacus, and that was not technology. It's a basic idea. But like the idea that if you think about all of the times your phone drives you crazy, now apply that to like getting to Mars and going and exploring the planet, right? There's a million and one things that can and will go wrong. I think the human element, I think we're never going to be able to count out the human element. We don't even know how the human brain fully works yet. Right. The idea that we think we're going to have a brain that is superior to that in a machine is sort of an interesting idea that, frankly, is being pushed by a lot of people who have a financial stake in convincing you they're creating the perfect, computer brain. I think you're right, though. I think the astronauts will walk on Mars. I do not think it will be like a Terminator in all likelihood. I think people just are like, it's fun to think about, but we have a long way to go. I mean, the batteries on these, like, on like a very advanced, like Boston Dynamics robot can only last for half an hour or something. So, true. How are they going to, there's ways to do it. I think we're just far off from that.
You are so absolutely right about that. Even with Tesla, I mean, you can only go so far in a battery operated car.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, also autopilot. I mean, Tesla has been touting this, and I say this as a guy who has a Tesla and never turns it on because I'm terrified of what it does. It has caused a ton of crashes. Yeah. And it is really, really an error-prone piece of software, and that's just driving around on roads on planet Earth. We're so far away from the stuff that you hear, like some of these guys talking about in the AI world, that they're going to suddenly have Skynet and it's going to start a nuclear war.
Right.
Yeah, we're not even in the beginning of that game.
So what's more mysterious, cryptocurrency or an AI?
Well, crypto is, I think there's a lot of mystery about it because it's very hard to explain or understand.
Yes.
And even the deeper you go, the less you seem to understand about it. Like, I mean, it's funny, but there's an interview with Mark Andreessen where somebody asked him to explain, he's, one of the greatest, minds in technology, huge investor in the crypto space. Somebody asked him to explain why people needed cryptocurrency, or why people needed these sort of ledger systems that exist that are, sort of what the blockchain stuff is. And he really struggled with an answer, and I think, like, if you're pumping billions of dollars into it and you're a technology genius and you can't really give someone a good, clear answer, we might need to spend a little bit more time figuring it out. I think we're just like everything now. We're just rushing into it.
Yes.
People are excited about it. It has some potential in the short term, but what is the long-term upside? We don't know yet. So we're in a process of exploration right now.
Dude, I was there when Pong came out, and I thought that was the greatest invention on the face of the planet.
I think about this all the time when I was playing like my NES and a new game would come out and you'd be like, these graphics are so realistic. Like, I feel like I'm there. And it's like, you look at the graphics and it's like 4 colors,
yeah,
and super pixelated. And when every step of the way that these moments happen where people are like, it's never going to get better than this. Go back and watch the first Toy Story.
Oh,
okay.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I mean, look at how you will laugh at how bad the animation looks. You will laugh at how just like first generation it looks. And like, that was the best of the best at its time. Yeah. And so, this stuff there's so many advancements coming that we have yet to even process or understand or think about. Like we're in the I've said this a million times. Maybe I'm a broken record. I just think we're in the earliest stages of living with and working with all of this technology. We're not at the end state. We're at the beginning state, right? Like the iPhone's only been around for, I don't know, 12 years or something. That's not very much time. And in that time, it's already evolved to new things and to new ways of how we use it. So, and that's just one small part of this puzzle. So I always like to just kind of remind myself that, we have not figured all of this out. And so the best thing we can do right now is learn and try to understand and navigate, how we are supposed to live with these devices.
Man, if you could only hear these conversations I'm having with these singer-songwriters who are horrified of the AI because they're horrified that it's going to steal their voice or steal their style of sound.
Yeah. Well, it will.
Oh, God.
I mean, people are already doing it. There's this AI Drake song that, went on Spotify and people were like, hey, this is pretty good. It's like the music was created by a human, but the voice was an AI version of Drake. AI is not the right. It was a, digital replication of his voice. Yeah. Using it was a deep fake essentially, right? Taking his voice and then modeling a program, that could speak it back. But people thought it was real and people liked it. They were like, this song's pretty good, actually, this new Drake track. I think there's going to be an explosion of that happening. I think the biggest targets are going to be people like that who are huge stars. And frankly, part of our job, and this is where I always, sort of what I was just saying, is our job as human beings is to learn to understand the differences between the real thing and the fake thing. There are plenty of signals if you pay attention to pick up on. And so how do you we have to learn a literacy around this that is essentially like researching before you decide it's the real thing, like looking into it a little bit. And, that is sort of a layer of life that we've never had before. But I think because of what technology is capable of, it sort of forces us to become different listeners and watchers and readers. And so, we have a bit of a challenge over the next few years to make sure we've got tools and skill sets to be able to do that.
Oh, yeah, because, I mean, we were both there when Cher released Believe, and we thought it was the coolest darn sound on the face of the planet. And then everybody started using it, and the human ears started going, I don't like this sound.
Right. Well, what's funny about autotune is it was originally used to correct in subtle ways. I mean, I used to produce music, so I remember the early days of autotune, and you'd use it like somebody came in the studio and they were a terrible singer, and you'd like, well, I can actually fix this. I can make them sound like they sing on key. Now it's used like that still all over the place. But then it became an effect. The overuse of it became an effect that now is like a vocal style that you hear. Yeah. And what you don't think about that much or care about that much at this point is the way it's used subtly to correct people's vocals. I will say, however, if you listen to like, the Eagles harmonizing in the 70s versus like a Disney pop record right now, there are noticeable differences in the quality of the sound. And I would say, the human element that has been taken out it's real and it's noticeable. And I think 99% of the audience may not care. But I do think there is going to be, there may be someday a return to an appreciation for the more things are faked, the more the real things are valuable. Yep. And so I think there could potentially be there's a generation coming after us that will think it's just so uncool to use any effects on vocals I'm telling you, there's going to be a generation not too far off that's like social media is so dumb and so lame and nobody wants to use it, or like streaming music is over. We only listen to vinyl. Like I'm telling you, I mean, vinyl sales are way up right now. So I think you never know like what the cycle is going to look like. I think culture can turn on a dime, and it really is about like how people come to the stuff, not just about what the machines do.
You're so right, because my 17-year-old grandson wants all my vinyl and all my CDs. He wants them all. And I keep looking at him going, but you've got it all. It's called streaming. No. I want the stuff you've got.
No, people are like, oh, wouldn't it be cool to like listen to a whole album not on Spotify? Yeah. It's a novel idea. My wife runs a bookstore, and we have these, the little paperbacks, the pulp paperbacks that you and I probably grew up with. Well, those are rare now. Those are actually like not the normal books that are sold. A normal paperback is larger. When teenagers come in the store, we have a rack of those little paperbacks. They're like, oh my God, look at these tiny books. These are so crazy. And they think it's like the most novel thing, no pun intended, the most novel thing in the world. And I think like that's how I want to think about the future kind of through those eyes. Like the things we take for granted or that we've already dismissed may be a treasure trove for a generation that we can't imagine yet. So, I'm not writing off the good old stuff just yet.
Joshua, you got to come back to this show anytime in the future. The door is always going to be open for you.
I mean, I would love to. I'm loving this conversation. Like I love to talk about, this is the thing. This is why, I wanted to do the podcast that, my podcast is to get into the levels below what you hear in the headlines, the stuff that like, you know what I mean? The headlines are just so full of it. I mean, it's just all, but funnily enough, the headlines you see are tuned to be ranked high in Google search or to show up and make you click on social media. Yeah. They are not a reflection of what these stories actually are. They are a reflection of trying to play the system so you will click on the story.
That's it.
And I think, I'd love to just have more conversations with people where you can say, okay, go one level below that, go two levels below that, and it's not the thing that you think it is.
Oh my God. Will you be brilliant today, okay?
I'm going to do my best.
All right. Bye, guy.
Thanks, man.